As Yaakov Avinu blesses his sons, and we'll see his grandsons, or two of them at least. And just before we get to the brachas, Yaakov Avinu requests something from Yosef. As we know, he asks, "Al nati pereni b'Mitzrayim." Please don't bury me in Mitzrayim. And Rashi has three comments on Al nati pereni b'Mitzrayim. Three reasons why not to bury me in Mitzrayim. As it's a Rashi on Pasuk Chavtes. Al nati pereni b'Mitzrayim. Perek Muzayim Pasuk Chavtes. Says Rashi, first of all, Sofa liyot afara kinem. Okay, the problem is that the dust or the sand is going to turn into kinim later on in the Makas Mitzrayim. So he doesn't want to be umerachashim tachas gufi. Says Rashi, they're going to be crawling all over my body. I want out. I don't want to be in Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's the first reason Rashi brings. Second reason is v'she'en misei chutz la'aretz chaim ela b'tzar gilgul mechilas. And the Mefarshim explain that, right? As we know that in Tchias HaMeisim, we're going to those that are in their kvarim are going to the kever is going to open up and they'll immediately be facing the Shechina. They'll see immediately the Shechina. And those that are in chutz la'aretz, on the other hand, they've got there's going to be, the Mefarshim say, there's going to be an earthquake and they're going to have to make their way, roll, Gilgul Mechilot, they're going to roll, or like a tolat, some Mefarshim say, got to crawl their way to get to Eretz Yisrael, and then only in Eretz Yisrael can they actually experience the Shekhinah, see come out into the open. So, and apparently this is very painful, and Yaakov Avinu did not want that problem, and therefore he wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Now, and thirdly is Shelo Yasuni Mitzrayim Avodah Zarah. Third thing is that he didn't want the Mitzrayim to make him into an idol, into an Avodah Zarah, which is interesting that Yosef, right, he didn't actually have that same
fear.
Question, that worry.
Same fear, right?
It's interesting. Why not? I don't have an answer for that, but
I don't think he would have been given permission to leave to be buried elsewhere. I think that may have been a problem.
So I heard such a thing that maybe it could be Yaakov Avinu knew that at least Yosef had the power.
Yeah.
So he could at least ask someone
right.
to execute it, but Yosef on the other hand, who's going to do it? Right. That could be the question. Yeah. But I think just that Rashi here is coming to answer. Whenever Rashi offers two comments, two answers, so we've got to know why is one not sufficient, and why is he offering two? And it's very much more uncommon that Rashi will bring three pshatim. I think there's one or two places he'll actually bring four, but here there's three, so we have to understand why each one is not sufficient on its own, why he has to bring three. So I think there's two questions here that really Rashi is answering. And that is, if you pay attention to Yaakov's request, which is, Al nati pereni b'Mitzrayim. The first thing is, don't bury me in Mitzrayim. But it doesn't necessarily mean, at this point, bury me in Eretz Yisrael.
No, it's not here.
Who says in Eretz Yisrael? Meaning, if you focus on the first answer of Rashi, which is kinim, he doesn't want the last to crawl all over him. So that happened in Mitzrayim, and therefore, if he's buried in Syria or somewhere else, not in Eretz Yisrael, he still won't have that. According to some, even in Goshen there was no lice. So therefore, it could have been just don't bury me in Mitzrayim. That just means don't bury me in Mitzrayim. It doesn't mean that yes, bury me in Eretz Yisrael. So meaning the first answer of Rashi, which is don't bury in because of lice. So that doesn't tell me yes to bury me in Eretz Yisrael. It just means out of Mitzrayim. Okay, so therefore Rashi needs to get to another answer, which is Gilgul Mechilot, which is to right. Yaakov doesn't want to be rolling from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, and therefore that second answer is specifically yes to bury me in Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't want to. Anywhere in Chutz La'aretz is going to be a problem. I mean, it's not only the lice being the problem, but anywhere in Chutz La'aretz I want to be. And then, lastly, the second question Rashi is possibly coming to answer is why immediately? Why did, like we see Yosef, right, he was carried out later on when, right, he requested is that to please take out my bones together when you leave, meaning after the Shibud Mitzrayim and whatever, then don't forget me and take me out. So, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was busy with, right? In Parashat Vayechi, he was busy with looking after Moshe Rabbeinu's bones and
looking after
Yosef bones. And so why did that not suffice for Yaakov Avinu when they leave? So then they'll take it out, and that Rashi is coming to answer. The third answer is he doesn't want to be even there momentarily because they're going to make him into Avodah Zarah. And that's why he insisted. Now he was worried that they're going to make him into Avodah Zarah. And even though it's interesting that you could ask, what's his problem? It's they doing the Avodah Zarah. It's not so. But as I'll say that also the person serving Avodah Zarah and the Avodah Zarah itself are going to be punished, are punishable by Hashem. So therefore we have three answers of Rashi, I think, dealing with these two problems. First of all, why Dafka? What is it not enough just out of Mitzrayim? Okay, just out of Mitzrayim. Who says yes into Eretz Yisrael? And second of all, why immediately? And that's Rashi has these three tirutzim.
Unlike Moshe Rabbeinu, we don't know where he is, where he's buried. We do know where Yaakov is buried, in Machpelah. And the Egyptian could come to Machpelah and perform whatever rites he wants to do. I mean, it doesn't seem like he really gets rid of the problem.
Uh-huh.
And it's a little more difficult. He has to travel far.
Well, it wouldn't be a national issue, though. I mean, where they would have,
they could have a pilgrimage of a whole group of them. I mean, it's possible they didn't, but it's certainly possible if he wanted to.
How's it going to stop them? Yeah. Well, so what was the problem of? I forgot to mention. What was the problem why Yaakov was worried that they're going to make him into Avodah Zarah? Is because when he came to Mitzrayim,
my question.
Sorry, when he came to Mitzrayim, so he stopped the famine. That was two things: stopped the famine, and the Nile rose to him. So people saw that this man is really special. So over there he was worried that they're making Avodah Zarah. I hear
I see.
what you're saying.
Now, Paro certainly knew of him.
Paro.
Paro.
Yeah.
And that's why he sent Yosef down, or his brothers, to go down and get him, bring him here, because I want him here. Because whoever hosts him is usually in good stead.
The question is, he must have had a nevuah about the Kinim. He had a...
Sure, that's right, 100%. I could knew.
And about the Gilgal, whatever they call it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There are a few other answers offered. In fact, one by Rashi's grandson, Rabbi Tam. He has another answer, which is very interesting as well. The fact that it says Rabbi Tam that Yaakov was worried if he would be buried in Mitzrayim, he would actually stop any plagues. He would prevent the plagues from happening in Mitzrayim. Because of his chus.
He was worried about that, Yaakov.
Yeah, Yaakov didn't want that the plague shouldn't come about.
He knew
because
it would be
well, if that was the case, then he wouldn't have to worry about the Kinim.
Yeah. So this is different to Rashi's first pshat, 100%. Yeah, exactly. So he was worried that it won't happen. Whereas Rashi was saying that it is going to happen and he doesn't want to be there, right? One other pshat, the Midrash Agadol suggests is that that Yaakov didn't want to be buried in Mitzrayim because that would legitimize Eretz Mitzrayim. Yaakov didn't want that people should say, if it's good enough for Yaakov, it's good enough for us. and it's almost Yaakov is making sure that they shouldn't think that Chutz La'aretz is the place for the Yidden, even though he was buried there, but it's only a station, but it's not a destination.
Also in the Nebuah, because later on, Shlomo Melech was told, you can't go back to Mitzrayim, you can't get towards, you can't, shouldn't go back there.
Right. Yeah, good point.
But the simplest shot would be that Yaakov so identified with Abraham and Yitzchak,
Yeah.
he would want to be buried with them.
Like ושכבתי עם אבוסי ונשאני בקבורתם וקברתני בקבורתם, right, which he said he wants to be buried.
That's it.
שכבתי עם אבוסי, he wants to die like his fathers, but he wants to be buried there as well. Yeah, correct, in Hebron.
And he buried Leah there also. Didn't he bury her before they went down to Mitzrayim?
Right.
So he would want to be buried in the
It's a
family
good
plot.
question why Yosef didn't want to be buried in the same place. Yosef just says, take my bones out of there.
Right.
Doesn't say, take me to Marat HaMachpelah.
Yeah.
In other words, he just said, don't leave me there.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody, I think he was down in the
I think,
north.
as far as I know, when Yosef was taken, all the other bones, all the other Shvatim came as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shevet is over here.
That's right, all the bones of those who, all the other sons
The kever of Dan. Yeah, all the other brothers.
were buried in Mitzrayim.
Right. Oh. Okay, so if we...
Other than that, of the Machpelah.
No.
So what, the other brothers, what happened to them? I mean, we know Dan is here, and the other brothers? We know Yosef is in Shechem, but how about the other?
As far as I know, they were buried in the Chelek. That's what I seem to remember. In the Chelek.
So somebody had to bring them. Someone had to bring them.
Yeah, apparently they were brought together with Yosef. As far as I know. But it's interesting, Yehuda, do we know of Kever of Yehuda? Do we know Kever of Yisachar? We know where the Chelek was. Interesting. It's a bit of a question, I think, the Kever done.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure.
But
We went on Tiyul then.
Tiyul,
Yeah.
yeah.
and they pointed it out.
And well, we knew it before. We knew it
Uh-huh.
before.
The Breslovers seem to say it's for sure.
Right.
They have it's painted all over it.
Uh-huh. Okay, if we move on just to Yaakov Avinu is now giving the beginning of the brachas. It's on. Now he starts off, which is a tremendous chiddush. He's now going to be giving brachas to Yosef and his sons. Okay, and we have to. Hopefully, we'll explain possibly how it was that Yaakov Avinu. Okay, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky has a tremendous question over here. That in fact he voices it almost like the Gemara has about Binyamin. That what is Yaakov? What in the world is Yaakov doing? He's favoring Yosef Udapam the second time. What's going on? Davar shenichshal boy. Something that he failed by favoring Yosef, and here he's at it again.
Except now the brothers recognize that Yosef was telling the truth, that everything he said is true.
Right, but still, it's something that will be ma'orer kinah. Here he's blessing grandchildren, which is like the next generation. Yaakov Avinu was now giving brachas to his children. Who mentioned grandchildren? And if you want to say that, it's not such a good question, but the Gemara has the question about Binyamin. When Yosef favors Binyamin, which is even less of a problem. Right? Yeah, it's Yosef favoring someone else. Yeah, you're talking about Yaakov Avinu. That's again favoring Yosef by giving brachas to his children. What is he doing? So that Yaakov Kamenetsky in the Emes Yaakov has a fantastic thing to say, a very important idea that also explains why the grandsons were given brachas, and also why specifically Ephraim was given more than Menashe. And soon we'll get to the switching of the hands, but at this point, says Rabbi Yaakov, yesod that when Yaakov realized that, as we know, the two grandsons were the only, they turned out to be the Shvatim, right? Because there were 12 Shvatim, but Levi did not get a chalik, and Yosef was then substituted by Yosef, Menashe and Ephraim. So therefore, at the end of the day, you still had 12, but there were two Shvatim already that were born in Mitzrayim. The only Shvatim that were actually born in Mitzrayim. And therefore, there was no favoritism. Says Rabbi Yaakov, there's no favoritism. Why? Because someone born in Mitzrayim, someone born in Chutz La'aretz needs the bracha. It's not that he's going out of his way to favor them and giving them a bracha over and above the others, but rather they needed the bracha. By being born into a society, being born into assimilation, in the heart of assimilation was in Mitzrayim, and they were born in Mitzrayim. They needed a tefillah, they needed a bracha, they needed shmirah for them, and that everyone realized. Meaning all the brothers, they never had any kinah because they realized, these guys never. They were born. They never saw Yaakov Avinu. This is the point. They never saw Yaakov Avinu in Eretz Yisrael, a house of Yaakov Avinu. They were never brought up in that, and therefore there was a tremendous danger. That's why he was looking. He was out to take care of the danger which presented itself by those that were born there. And he says further that the names, if you notice the names of Menashe and Ephraim, Menashe in Parashat Miketz, the pasuk says, why is Menashe called Menashe? Why did Yosef call Menashe? Because Ki nashani Elokim es kol amali, which means that Hashem has allowed me, or He has made me forget my past. He's made me forget all the tzarros that he had from his father's home. And Ephraim is called, why? Ki Hifrani Elokim be'eretz ani, is that he's now saying Hashem has allowed me to multiply, fruitful in be'eretz ani, in Mitzrayim. So he says Rabbi Yaakov, you can see already in the names of Yosef's children that there's been a tremendous change. Here, Menashe, he names him. He's still remembering the homeland. He's remembering the shtetl. Still remembering old times.
So
and this is how the connection. There's still a connection. Menashe was although he was born in Mitzrayim, but he was born into a house where they, I presume they spoke Yiddish, right? Something like that, where in fact they spoke Hebrew, because Menashe knew Hebrew. It says he was the Malitz ben Atam. But on the other hand, Ephraim, which as far as I know, there was probably only a 6-year gap, I think maximum that could be between Menashe and Ephraim, but still already Ephraim was called what? He was called Hashem allowing me to fruitful in Mitzrayim, meaning nothing to do from the past. There was no connection anymore. And he was saying that, says Rabbi Yaakov, it could be that Yaakov foresaw this, and he saw the tremendous danger that's going to be someone that's not born, never saw Yaakov and his household in Eretz Yisrael, and he's born into Mitzrayim. There's this danger he's going to become entrenched. And in fact, he says a chiddush that Yaakov Avinu, before he gives the brachas, he mentions Eretz Canaan a few times. Rachel died by Eretz Canaan, and Eretz Canaan. Why? Because he was stressing this point. Don't think that the land, that Mitzrayim is a destination. Rather, it's a station, right? That you've got to go, but you've got to know that Eretz Yisrael is the place that you've got to end up. He was trying to stress that Nekudah, that Eretz Canaan. Don't forget. And says Rabbi Yaakov something outstanding that we find later on. The Bnei Ephraim, the Ma'apilim, the boat that is named after the boat that came to Eretz Yisrael. It was called Ma'apilim after the Ma'apilim of the Torah. The Ma'apilim were Jews that 30 years before the Jews came out of Mitzrayim, they couldn't handle it anymore. And they, even though Moshe Rabbeinu said it's not yet time, they said they left, or they tried to leave, and they got shot down, they got killed. And Chazal tell us that these were Bnei Ephraim. Says Rabbi Kamenetsky, why, just because, why Bnei Ephraim over Bnei Menashe, let's say, why Bnei Ephraim were the ones to try to get out or leave Mitzrayim early? So he says it could be from what we're saying over here, that Ephraim were the people that were so entrenched in Mitzrayim, it was particularly difficult for them, because they felt a part and parcel of Egyptian culture, and they were, the day before they were drinking coffee with their mates, with the Egyptian friends in the office, and the next day they became their taskmasters, so they couldn't handle it anymore. It got to a point where they couldn't come to terms that they forget Yosef, they forget all that we did for them. Why? Meaning, if it was someone else that had no kesher to Mitzrayim, so for them, it's another, right? It's they afflicting us, they giving us sorrows, but that's normal. We live in Golus, that's how it is. But Ephraim, that were part and parcel of Mitzrayim, it was particularly difficult for them, and that's why he suggests that maybe they Dafka couldn't handle it anymore. That's why they had to get out. It's a combination of wishful thinking and bad calculation that they made it out early. But that's why it was Dafka B'nai Ephraim. So the point is, says Rabbi Yaakov, is that Yaakov Avinu is given the brachas because he felt that they needed it, and no one had any issues with that. Yes, Nebuch, they didn't have the schus of being true. Yaakov Avinu, he paid attention. He used to. It says Ephraim was a ben bais by him. Later on, Ephraim came to learn by him, Menashe as well. So at least he taught them, but he was worried that. And in fact, the Maisa, he was worried, but he was worried for good reason. Chazal tell us that, what's the reason? Says Rashi, why was, when Yaakov Avinu asked them, Mi Eile, he says, who are these children? Now, of course, Yaakov Avinu knew who they were. He used to give share to Ephraim and Menashe. So it says Rashi, he saw in the future, as you say, he had Nevuah, in the future, bad guys were coming out of Menashe and Ephraim. Ephraim had Yeravam and Achav, the most terrible kings in the Jewish people, and from Menashe, he says Yehu. Menashe says wasn't a good guy. Anyway, so he was correct in thinking, in worrying who Menashe and Ephraim were, but therefore he gave brachas almost as a shmirah for them.
But you said that Menashe had more of a connection to Eretz Yisrael. But meanwhile,
It was probably
Chetzi Menashe
half and half.
wanted to be in Eva Hayade.
Oh, you should know that it's not so clear. Some actually learn.
I know.
I remember seeing
that Moshe asked Menashe to do it because he didn't trust the other two tribes who
Correct.
wanted to stay on the right side.
Right,
Yeah.
he wanted them to be there
From
for
B'nai Ephraim.
Watch them.
Just watch them.
B'nai Menashe, there was big Talmidei Chachamim, and Moshe Rabbeinu requested from them. I think we mentioned this actually.
Maybe.
In fact, Menashe got
What is it?
big
Reuben and
land.
God. Reuben and God, I think.
Right, in the Torah it says
Reuben and Gad.
and it hardly
It
mentions
was half of
ever
Menashe.
half of Menashe, but it
Yeah,
hardly
but-
mentions them. In the whole story with Moshe, with
Reuben and God came
it's
to
always
Moshe.
Reuben and Gad, and then later on is Chetzi Menashe. Moshe Rabbeinu requested that they come and join them. They were to be the spiritual leaders, and I saw actually this year that Moshe Rabbeinu offered them additional land, because if you notice on Transjordan, Menashe has a massive portion.
Yes, more like
And in Eretz Yisrael, Menashe has a very
the
big
other side of the
portion.
Yarden.
But on Transjordan, he was given a tremendous, and apparently Moshe Rabbeinu offered it as an incentive for them to move over.
But they still had the Garo to go through.
They still?
The Garo to go through.
Correct.
So even though he offered it to them, he must have known that they were going to get this anyway.
Mhm.
Right? Did we learn that the Garo was all set already? Right?
I don't know if that happened before. I don't know if it happened before
The girl
The Garo was the Shua.
Sure, yeah.
with Yeshua. Yeah.
Right. So, but they're saying that Moshe promised them this land, this extra piece,
He asked them to join them.
and you're going to get more land for that. So he must have had some kind
Ah.
of, an idea that this was.
One second, but the girl was for Eretz Yisrael, also for Transjordan?
The Garo was
Mainly for
when
Israel.
Yeshua.
it was what happened to Yehoshua, but it was only for Eretz
I
Israel.
think, yeah.
It's troubling me is the fact that all the Shvatim except Binyamin were born Chutz La'aretz. They were born by Lavan. They were all based Lavan. They were all born out of Eretz Israel.
Yes, good point.
But they did grow up with Yaakov. That's the big difference, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then he moved to Eretz Israel.
Yosef,
okay, good
Yosef
point,
was
yeah.
born also.
Yeah, no, I should have. Okay, good.
Well, they was
Thank you for mentioning
what
that.
about Binyamin?
Meaning,
He was born in Eretz Israel.
He was born in Eretz
It was
Israel.
right before they crossed over.
right,
Then she died.
Was it Eretz Israel? No. But no, okay, good point.
They
Meaning,
slept
but they, at least they saw.
They
Yaakov
grew
in
up
Eretz
with
Israel.
them.
They grew up with Yaakov in Eretz Israel. True, they were born there. Good. So,
Did one of Yosef's sons act as a Targumon? So that-
Menashe, right.
Menashe.
Yeah, acting like he was translating, that Yosef isn't understanding these spies.
Right.
So he,
Right. So he knew Hebrew. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
And-
Menashe at least had some kesher. That's what it says about at least Menashe had some kesher. But you saw already by Ephraim's time it's petered out.
it is safe to assume that Menashe and Ephraim, they themselves never made it to Eretz Israel? The giant
No,
desert?
that's not true, because I think we learned in Sefer Yeshua that one of the tribes, I think it was Menashe, used to come back and forth.
Went back and forth, right?
Yeah, there was one tribe that
You saying Menashe and
That's
Ephraim
the tribe,
themselves?
but the
Themselves.
Menashe and Ephraim
from
themselves,
themselves.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
Right. Vayomus.
they were born
Yosef
outside,
B'chol Hador
and they never made it.
I see, yeah.
What's also interesting is that in the Haggadah, we talk about Lavan. He was worse than Mitzrayim. I mean, he's portrayed as the worst. He wanted to kill us all. Mitzrayim didn't want to kill us. They just wanted us to be their
Well, kill us
servants
spiritually,
spiritually.
which may be the worst.
Just to, if we focus just at least on one pasuk, Perik Mem Ches pasuk Yudaled, in the switching of Yaakov's hands, something really amazing that I don't know. You could learn the parsha many times and still not come up with the deal from the Malbim. And the Malbim says as follows: that Vayishlach Yisrael, as we know, Yosef goes and presents Menashe and Ephraim. Perik Mem Ches pasuk Yudaled. Yudaled. So Yosef presents. Right, Yosef presents Ephraim and Menashe, puts Menashe on Yaakov's right, and he puts Ephraim on Yaakov's left. And it says pasuk Yudalet, Vayishlach Yisrael et Yemino, and Simino Vayoshes al Rosh Ephraim. So he goes and sticks his right hand onto Ephraim, who was on his left, Vetzmolo al Rosh Menashe. He puts his left hand onto Menashe, who is actually on his right. Sikel et yadav ki Menashe ha-bechor. So he switched his hands because Menashe is the Bechor. Now, this is very difficult because if you understand ki as giving reason, ki is in a sinas tam, so he switched his hands because Menashe is the Bechor. It should be the opposite. Even though Menashe is the Bechor, he switched his hand. Meaning, you have Menashe on his right. Why you want to put your right hand on the Bechor? So why are you switching your hand? Why does it say Sikel Terav Ki Menashe Bechor? Means because he switched his hands because Menashe Bechor. I'm asking, it's the opposite. It should be Sikel Terav even though Menashe is the Bechor. Meaning Menashe the Bechor is on the right. He should be putting his hand on Menashe. Now he switched his hand even though Menashe is the Bechor. That's how it should be.
You know what I think is very interesting about this whole concept of switching the hands, because it mentions first that he put his right hand on Ephraim.
Yes.
So that means right hand is here. That means the other hand has to be on top of the right hand.
Excellent. That's the Malbim. You were coming
Oh,
to the
really?
Malbim. Good. So I'm coming there. I'll
Okay.
explain what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's saying Dafka. He should have been give them to the Bechor. But he had some understanding that it should be the other way around. In this
Right,
case.
but in the lashon of the pasuk is difficult because he switches his hands. Sikel et yadav ki Menashe Bechor. He switches his hand because Menashe is the Bechor. That's difficult. Now it says the Rabbeinu Bechaya and
Chachma.
some Rishonim say, yeah, we'll get to the word Sikel in a second, but just on the key, so the Rabbeinu Bechaya says it's a rule that one should know. We know always key can be translated in 4 different ways.
Since
Right, ki, daha, dilma, ella, and says Rabbeinu Bechaya, there's a 5th option, and that is afalpi. Ibn Ezra says this as well,
even though
that ki can be also understood as opposite, which is a big chiddush because it's the exact opposite of because, meaning in the sinner's tongue, afalpi means even though. For example, we found this, and he says this is a pshat in davening when we say Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu. We say to Hashem, please forgive us because we've sinned. Now, why should He forgive you? Because you sinned. I mean, right? By sinning is not a reason for Him to forgive you.
No.
So Rabbeinu Bechaya says the pshat is that we asking, please forgive us even though we've sinned. I mean, you could argue, you could say, right, you're just mentioning, please Hashem, forgive me for the sin. Right?
What would be to forgive? Let's say I ask for forgiveness if I didn't sin.
Oh, so Hashem knows that we sinned,
Yeah.
so we don't have to
And
tell
we're
Him.
admitting we did.
Oh, so
Yeah,
you're saying
so
that
why
it's
say even no?
right, so you're saying it's an admitting.
Yeah.
Good. No, that's acceptable.
Because asking for forgiveness is enough.
Good. Right. Okay, so that's the one point. But the Malbim has a different shot. But we'll see on the word sikel. Also, sikel et yadav ki Menashe Bechor. Sikel says Rashi is Menashon of the Targum ach keminun, which means with wisdom, meaning he switches his hands with chachma. Says the Malbim, what chachma is there in switching your hands? Meaning, if you would ask any cheder child, you want to get your right hand to something on your left, what do? Okay, you want to put your right hand on a sweet that's on your left, and you want to put your left hand on a sweet that's on your right. So what do? So anyone would say you switch your hand. There's no real chachma in switching the hand. This is what we're getting to. So what does it mean? Sikel is the chachma. It says the Malbim as you mentioned that the chachma over here is that there's a halacha in Duchanim when a kohen. Anyone here a kohen?
Maybe.
So maybe.
Maybe.
A Levi.
Yeah.
So when a kohen duchens, there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that when he positions his hands, the right hand should be higher than the left. When he puts out his hands, the right hand is higher than the left. And apparently it's from the source is from the Zohar in Parashat Vayechi, I think, or in Nosoi, that we learn from the word Yadav is written without a Yud, and it's referring to Chazal learn out that the Zohar learns out that the right hand should be an upper hand. That's basically the right hand should be upper. And as we know, the right hand is always the one with the power, with the strength.
Even if you're left-handed?
Yeah. Well, at least in terms of brachas, at least I think the right hand always has the upper hand. So we're saying that there's two levels over here. There's the right hand and there's an upper hand, and that's why Yaakov Avinu, although Ephraim was going to be the dominant one over here, but Menashe also he wanted to recognize and give him what he deserved. So therefore, says the Malbim, if you look at the psukim, Vayishlach Yisrael et Rosh es Yaminoi Vayoshes al Rosh Ephraim, that Yisrael, Yaakov first put out his right hand that way onto Ephraim, and then afterwards he put his left hand, Ve'etz Molo al Rosh Menashe, and then his left hand, causing that the left hand will be above the right hand. You first put the right hand and then the left hand, so you're giving the right hand to Ephraim, and you're giving a left hand to an upper left hand, to Menashe, and that way you can accomplish both. And this was the chachma in Yaakov's act of switching the hands, because he wanted to also give Menashe something, which was at least the upper hand. Just this year, I noticed in 2 minutes, this year, someone quoted Rabbi Dovid Wolpe has a pshat, interestingly enough. We know later on in Shoftim, it's a big Pekim here in Novi, in the Shoftim, this is an interesting point for you. Shoftim in Perek Ches, the Gilad, okay, he's coming to fight with Midianim. And the Bnei Ephraim have issue with Gilad because he didn't include them in the fight. And Gilad says to them, no problem, you take care of these two kings, Ze'ev and Arov, and which they did, and that way he actually calmed them down, and he said, yes, without you killing those two kings, we wouldn't have managed. So they bought that, and they calmed down. 4 Prakim later, Perek Yud Beis, we found that Yiftach is now the Yibor Chayil, and he has issues, he's fighting against Bnei Ammon, and over there he calls, who does he call? So he doesn't call the Bnei Ephraim, and Bnei Ephraim are insulted. He didn't include us in the fight, and they have issues, and they start waging war against Yiftach. In fact, just to point out, if Yiftach, Gilad, he acted b'hachna'ah, and that's what saved the day, by acting and saying, you know what, he was complimenting the Bnei Ephraim. That actually saved the day, just by the way. And Yiftach, on the other hand, he was attacking. Yiftach, he said to them, what do you mean? I called you many times and you never helped me, and now that's why we didn't include you. And because of that, they went out to war. That's just by the way. And so the pasuk says that 42,000 Bnei Ephraim were killed after that occurrence. So, but also from Yiftach, from Gilad, what they did was along the river. So some of the Bnei Ephraim were trying to escape, and they blocked off the ferries or whatever was allowing them to go. And one of the things that they made sure, or anyone that was coming wanted to leave, so they would ask them the question, right, the famous question. They asked them, okay, are you from Bnei Ephraim? So obviously they're going to say no, because otherwise they're going to be killed. But the second question was, say for me, please, the word Shibonis. Shibonis. And Bnei Ephraim could not pronounce the shin. They could only pronounce the sin. So they would say Sibolit. And that was a giveaway, and then they took care of them, shot them on the spot. So Bnei Ephraim, for some reason, they couldn't pronounce the sin. They couldn't pronounce the shin, only a sin. Rav Karenstein asks, you know, what they all had a lisp that they couldn't. What's pshat? Bnei Ephraim, out of the blue, they couldn't pronounce it like this. So he says possibly, this is just you can take it or leave it, but he says from our pasha, from the word sikel et yadav, ki menashe abachor. Now you can say it 2 ways. You can say it with a shin or with a sin. Okay, if you say shikel or shachal, he says it's milashon hashlacha. You know, it switches around the lamed and the chaf. Milashon hashlacha, meaning Yaakov Avinu, he just threw his hands without any intention. He threw his hand over there. He threw his other hand over there. No intention. No kavanah over there. But Ephraim, of course, they wanted to be known that Yaakov did it b'secham, b'sikelet alav. He b'dafka put his right hand. B'dafka put his right hand on Ephraim. It wasn't just by chance. Ephraim got the dominant bracha, and that's why it could be that they taught in all the chadorim. They made sure whenever you teach, there's no such thing as a shin. There's no shin. Always sikelet alav.
Wow,
I don't know.
That's very good.
That's interesting.
Very good.
And just lastly, if we can just jump to the end of the parasha, just in 2 minutes, there's a fascinating midrash to do with when the brothers return. So when Yosef returned from burying Yaakov Avinu, possibly something very apt to end off Sefer Bereshis with is that when Yosef returns, the brothers fabricate a story that Lu used to mention Yosef, that our father before he died, he commanded not to take revenge. The question the Midrash poses is why is Yaakov, what caused the brothers, at least maybe the Midrash is coming to answer this, what caused the brothers to think that that Yosef is now going to retaliate and take revenge? What was the cause over there? Says the Midrash, what caused them, what caused them to think that now, Pitom, okay fine, he died, Yaakov Avinu died, but who's to say that he's going to take revenge? Says the Midrash that, as we know, Yosef went on the way back from burying Yaakov. He went past the bore. He went past the pit that he was thrown into.
I had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because that is north of Hebron. So why would he go north to go south? That was Dochan, whatever. But if you look at Dosan. It's north of Hebron. Now he's going back to Mitzrayim, but he went north to go south.
Well, maybe you want to pass the pit.
He went past. Yeah.
I mean, I know that. But
right. So it's the Midrash. It's the Midrash Bereshis Rabbah, the Midrash Tanchuma, other Midrashim. They all say this that he went past the border. It's interesting.
No, I believe that, but it wasn't on his way back. He made a special trip.
He made a special trip.
He had to make a special trip.
Oh, so the Midrash Agur. I don't have the exact.
The bench Gomel, I guess.
Say again?
The bench Gomel.
Yes, that's what they say. Oh.
Yeah.
So the Midrash says as follows. Rabbi Shimon says, "Batorah b'nevim u'b'ksuvim." The following concept is mentioned 3 times in Torah, Nevim, and Ksuvim. What's this concept? Matzinu she'adam tzarich latzet yedei habriot kedei shehu yotzei yedei hamakom. That a person has to be above suspicion. Whenever a person, he's got to make sure, it's like almost like a maris ayin. You should always be careful of not being suspect. A person, whatever he does, even if he's doing something correct, but you've got to be aware, possibly people will see it as not correct, and you've got to be above suspicion. And this we learn, says the Pasuk, says the Midrash, V'yisim nikim Hashem u'mi Yisrael. This concept actually came from Reuven and Gad. Moshe Rabbeinu told them, you got to go and fight first, and then you can go back to Transjordan, but don't, because otherwise people will think that you this is just a cop out. You didn't want to come and fight. So V'yisim nikim Hashem u'mi Yisrael. You've got to be clean, right? You've got to be above suspicion. And the Midrash continues, V'chein, and similarly, another example of being above suspicion is our Parsha, the end. Yosef, when he comes back from burying Yaakov, so the brothers see ki meis avihem, and then they fabricate this story. So there's this, so they learn from this Midrash a fascinating thing that you shouldn't, just to end off, Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak explains, Umar Ra'u, what did they see? What did the brothers see? He says, when Yosef returned, so he went and he went and looked into the bor. He remained there for a few minutes, and the brothers noticed this, and they saw, this is trouble. Yeah, he's looking into the bor, and now he's going to retaliate.
Like you forgot about it all this time.
And say Chazal in the Midrash, V'lo niskaven ela l'shem shamayim. Yosef was only going there, levarich, brach she'asa li nisim, l'asa li neis b'mokem hazeh. He went there to make a bracha. He was connecting to Hakadosh Baruch Hu to make a bracha. Thank you for saving me. Look, it was probably a very emotional time for Yosef. And just to appreciate who we're dealing with, that's what I say, to finish off Sefer Bereshis, to appreciate who the Avos HaKadoshim, who the Shvatim were, how great they were, there's an expectation here that is expected of Yosef over and above. Yeah, he's doing a great thing. He's making a bracha to Hashem, connecting with Hashem, but he's taken to task that he wasn't aware of what his brothers will be thinking. This is to be above suspicion, meaning even at such a point, it's an amazing thing, that even at such a point where he's thanking Hashem, got nothing to do with anyone else, but he's got to be aware, meaning it's very hard for us to appreciate this, but just to appreciate the Shvatim, the Shiftei Kar, the Avos, they weren't just we shouldn't ever make the mistake of comparing them to ourselves. Here Yosef is expected to be worried about what the brothers are going to say. It's an amazing thing, and therefore we should never make the mistake of comparing ourselves again to the Avos. Right, very often people try and make comparisons. They character, balances or character and what's it called?
Assassination.
And analyzing characters in Tanakh, you always have to be careful of who you're dealing with over here. Yosef like for example, Yosef, when the brothers leave him, it says Alter Guzu Baderech. Yosef comments over there. Altis asku bidvar halacha. It says the Brisker Rav says you have to warn them. Imagine Yosef is warning them not to get so involved that they're going to get tripped up on the way. Meaning here, we're talking about the Shiftei Kar where it says they died. They died. The Shama came back. What would they be thinking about at such a time? It's hard to imagine. And says Yosef, no, they're going to be oisik in Torah at kedei kach that they're going to lose their way. That's why he has to warn them. Again, just for us to appreciate who the greats are, and we shouldn't think that we can compare with them.
I can say the same thing, Hashikov. With Sheva Dan, we learned that one of the reasons that Dan wanted to stay a Yarden, the Shevet, is because they were so attached to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was buried there. And it's the same thing, but nobody knew that. So they, pointed their finger. They would point their finger at Sheva Dan for that reason, and that they didn't want to be part of them, or they wanted more, or whatever. But the real reason was they wanted to be attached to Moshe Rabbeinu.
Reuven and God.
Huh? God. What did I say? God. I meant God. Sorry.
God.
God. God. Yeah.
So maybe Yosef should have done what Yaakov did. He sent the family ahead and then snuck off to go get the Ark of Titanum, by himself, right? So he had to deal with Sarah Shalesa, but that's another story. But so if Yosef just did this all by himself, the brothers wouldn't have seen him by the pit. They wouldn't have to worry about suspicion. Look what he's thinking. Right? You want to make a bracha? Okay, go do it by himself. Make a bracha, and then catch up.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Very good.